This video will show you briefly how to interact with notebooks on the Noteable service. As you can see in front of me, I've got medical data with Python notebooks. So each of these are separated into cells, which I can click on individually to select them. There are two types of cells, broadly speaking, the markdown cell and the code cell. Code cells are probably going to be a bit more interesting for assignments. So in this cell, we're importing libraries, so code from other people, that we can use later in the notebook. Normally you'd have to install these things, but because they're pre-installed on Noteable, you can just import them with these statements and then they're ready for use later on. One of the libraries that we just installed, scikit-learn, has some inbuilt data sets, including this diabetes dataset, which we can load with just one function. To run a cell, just click on it until the outline is green, and then press Shift and Enter. And it's just reloaded that dataset once again. So in this notebook, it goes through the context of the data, showing you how to access the description of it, including the target and all of the feature vectors. There are 10 feature vectors or attributes, and there's one target vector as well, which is the diabetes outcome. We then download the data into a specific kind of data frame with pandas, which is a library that we installed at the top. And then we use some of the pandas functions to just explore the data, and you can see just how quickly these run. To find all of the null values in the whole data set, running this cell takes less than a second. And again, running this data describe cell gives us nice summary statistics for all of the variables, all the way down to the target variable. And so there's some really useful tools for exploratory data analysis with pandas. Moving on then to a common machine learning method, linear regression is often one of the first ones taught for quantitative outcomes, like with medical data. This is fairly common. And so here we just get the data into a format that's required, and then you can plot it straight away in just one line, as simple as this one here. Some of these aren't even really necessary, so the blue here wouldn't really be required. And you can see that you've got data for your just one variable, S5. And you can see this divides the data out fairly well, so if we change for S1, for example, it's a bit more scattered, a bit more rounded. But if we change back to S5, which is the one we'll use, you can see there's a bit more of a correlation here. And so you can see how easy it is to just change something in a cell and get a different result, just quickly to see what happens. And so here this will be familiar to machine learning students, but we split into test and train data, train the model, fit it on the training data, and then predict. And then you can get out some statistics using some various functions from various libraries. And then plot. Now here this plot is particularly interesting. If we click on it, you can then interact with it. So you can drag it around. Works a bit like kind of navigation apps. You can zoom in by selecting an area and various other functions. And then you can also do that for the test data. So here we can see the same sort of thing. And then very quickly, this is the same thing again, but with three feature vectors as opposed to just the one. Obviously that's a bit harder to visualize, but you can still get out these interesting kind of results and kind of have a point for discussion. So supposing this was a question, this is a markdown cell, so a written cell, and I can just say, explain the results. And then as the student I can type my response here and then just run the cell. As with code cells, everything works sort of the same sort of standard way. I can just run that and then have that all render